Imagine standing on a low, scrub-covered ridge in Thessaly just as dawn bleeds through a veil of rolling cloud. Behind you, Roman legionaries file past in disciplined silence, each scutum's red paint smeared with rainwater that smells faintly of iron and pine. Miles away, though distance is a fiction when terror telescopes the world, the metallic clatter of the Macedonian phalanx swells like an approaching storm. 16-foot sarissas, rattling against bronze greaves, the slow drumbeat of boots trampling wet soil, the barked cadence of officers who swear they wield the ghost of Alexander like a drawn sword. You clutch a throwing pilum and wonder whether it can pierce the moving forest about to crest the next hill. Rumor says some phalangites have bound their pikes together with leather thongs, so even if one man falls, the spear wall stays locked. Another rumor claims their king, Philip V, has packed his treasure in fast wagons, ready to flee north if luck deserts him. Still, another whispers that Titus Quinctius Flamininus, the young Roman commander whose very name unfurls like a trumpet call, has sworn an oath to shatter Macedon's prestige in a single morning because the Senate grows impatient with half-victories. Somewhere between these hopes and fears lies the hinge on which the ancient world will swing from Hellenistic kingdoms to Roman dominion. Feel the earth vibrate under two incompatible doctrines of war, one rooted in the heroic phalanx that toppled Persia, the other in the flexible manipular legion that survived Pyrrhus and Hannibal. In the next heartbeat, those doctrines will collide on the fog-wrapped slopes of Cynoscephalae, the Dog's Head's hills, where every snap of a sarissa and clang of a gladius will echo for 22 centuries and teach future generals that adaptability, not tradition, decides destiny. To grasp why Cynoscephalae became the crucible in which the ancient world's military future was forged, we must rewind to a Greece made weary by constant power shifts, yet unwilling to release its golden memories. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his vast empire fractured into rival kingdoms, Macedon under the Antigonids, Egypt under the Ptolemies, and the Seleucid realm stretching east toward Persia. Each successor state claimed inheritance to the conqueror's brilliance, and each kept alive his signature engine of conquest, the Macedonian phalanx. 16 ranks deep, bristling with pikes too long for any opponent's spear to match, the formation could bulldoze virtually anything in its path, so long as that path was level, the weather dry, and the men drilled to machine-like cohesion. For a century, the phalanx reigned supreme in Hellenistic battlefields, but by the late 200s, its edge had dulled. Veteran soldiers were scarce, replaced by levies who trained months instead of years. Meanwhile, Rome, an upstart republic that had clawed its way to dominance in Italy through wars against Samnites, Etruscans, and Carthaginians, perfected a different philosophy, the manipular legion. Rather than a single massive block, the legion broke into smaller units able to swivel, retreat, and reinforce like joints in a living skeleton. Rome's citizen soldiers carried heavy oval shields and short stabbing swords, weapons optimized for vicious close work, once javelins had disrupted an enemy line. They revered discipline, but also initiative. A centurion could adjust tactics without awaiting royal permission. In 200 BC, while Rome licked wounds from the Second Punic War, Philip V of Macedon probed into the Aegean and Asia Minor, bullying weaker states and flirting with an alliance to Antiochus III. These maneuvers alarmed the Greek city-states of the Aetolian League, Rhodes, and Pergamum, commercial powers whose ships needed free seas, not Macedonian tolls. They appealed to Rome, portraying Philip as a tyrant ready to exploit Rome's exhaustion. The Senate debated, but voices of hawks such as Marcus Porcius Cato and the ambitious young Flamininus argued that checking Macedon abroad would prevent future wars in Italy. Once again, Rome declared a crusade to protect Greek freedom, though skeptics noted that Roman swords usually came with Roman chains. Flamininus sailed in 198 BC with 2 fresh legions and a dream of prosecuting a war so decisive the Greek world would welcome Rome as liberator, not occupier. He was only 30, yet radiated the calm authority of an elder statesman. Where earlier commanders treated Greek allies as pawns, Flamininus courted them with fluent Greek, attending their festivals and quoting Homer. Cynics claimed he memorized speeches solely to soften resistance. Admirers believed he truly adored Hellenic culture and saw Rome as its new steward. Whatever his motives, he forged an alliance network that squeezed Philip's supply lines and forced the Antigonid king to winter in Thessaly. By early spring 197 BC, both armies prowled the rolling highlands south of modern-day Lamia, each seeking favorable ground. Torrential rains turned roads into rivers, hampering heavy wagons and ruining forage. Scouts clashed daily, skirmishes sketching the outline of a larger showdown neither side could avoid. Philip, seasoned yet reckless, understood that a phalanx trapped in narrow valleys risked piecemeal destruction by nimble legions. He therefore sought open plains where pikes could lock shields and trample opposition. Flamininus, equally aware, aimed to lure Philip into broken, hilly country, whose ridges would nullify the pike wall's unity. The opposing forces were well matched in raw numbers, roughly 32,000 Macedonians, including 16,000 Phalangites, 2,000 Hypaspists, 2,000 elite Peltasts, 8,000 assorted Thracian and Illyrian auxiliaries, and 2,000 cavalry, faced about 33,000 Romans and allies, 2 legions, an equal number of Italian allies organized in maniples, 1,000 Ligurian light infantry, 3,000 Cretan and Illyrian archers, and about 2,000 Greek and Roman cavalry. The moral calculus, however, tilted. Philip's men fought to preserve ancestral prestige, but were fatigued after years of campaigning. Rome's legions fought to avenge earlier frustrations and carried an institutional confidence born of victories over Carthage's elephants and Hannibal's cunning. The stage was set near a chain of low limestone hills, the locals called Cynoscephalae, dogs' heads, so named because twin knolls resembled alert hounds keeping watch over the plain. On the eve of battle, drizzle drifted across scrubby slopes dotted with waist-high bushes. Visibility was poor. Morale flickered with each lightning flash. Yet within every camp beat hearts that sensed tomorrow would crown one military system and condemn the other to swift obsolescence. What neither Philip nor Flamininus could foresee was how fog, chance, and the initiative of minor officers would weave together into a textbook demonstration that battlefield flexibility outranks rigid grandeur. Cynoscephalae would not merely decide the Second Macedonian War, it would inscribe a lesson so enduring that future tacticians, from Caesar to Napoleon to modern armored warfare theorists, would echo its refrain, adapt or perish. The gray light of chapter 24, June 197 BC, though ancient sources dispute the exact day, rose over a landscape soaked from night storms. In Philip's camp, trumpets roused Phalangites before dawn. Soldiers donned quilted linothorax cuirasses, strapped bronze greaves, and shouldered sarissas whose ash shafts felt heavier after days of damp. Officers debated whether to move out or hold positions until skies cleared. Scouts reported Roman detachments near the Dogs' Heads Ridge, but no full deployment. Eager to seize the initiative and secure the high ground, Philip dispatched a reconnaissance force of light infantry and cavalry under his trusted general Nicanor to probe the hills. Simultaneously, Flamininus ordered 2,000 light troops, Thracian mercenaries, Cretan archers, and a mix of Roman velites, led by the tribune Lucius Furius, to climb the western slopes and gauge Macedonian intentions. Neither advance party knew the other was coming. Fog clung to the heights, muffling hoofbeats and footfalls. At roughly the same hour, both forces burst through opposite curtains of mist and collided at a saddle between the twin dogs' heads. Surprise sparked into violence. Slingstones cracked shields, arrows stitched flesh, javelin shafts quivered in wet soil. The skirmish lines traded flurries until thicker Roman reinforcements and the raw aggressiveness of Ligurian auxiliaries pushed Nicanor's men back down the eastern slope. News that Romans held the crest jolted Philip. Losing high ground meant conceding observation and allowing the enemy to dictate battle terrain. He ordered 2 taxis, brigade-sized phalanx blocks, plus supporting peltasts to retake the ridge. As these heavy troops trudged uphill, the skirmish fight on the summit intensified. Roman velites dared Macedonians to close, then darted behind shrubs or into hollows, pelting advancing pikes from flanks. The Cretans, famed for deadly accuracy, used the slight breeze to curve arrows behind shields. The Macedonian peltasts responded with volley fire of their own, and for nearly an hour, the summit became a cauldron of clanging bronze and shouting men unseen by their main armies waiting beyond the fog curtain. Flamininus recognized the battle's center of gravity was forming on that ridge. He detached his left legion under the legate Gnaeus Domitius to reinforce Furius and instructed cavalry commanders to screen the Roman right against any sudden Macedonian surge. Philip, believing his entire army risked being fed uphill in piecemeal increments, decided to commit fully. He formed the main phalanx in 2 wings, right and left, each 8 taxis deep, separated by contingents of mercenary Thracians and Illyrians. He hoped the ordered advance of tens of thousands might shove Romans off the ridge by sheer momentum. Down among the Roman ranks lining the western plain, legionaries tightened chin straps and waited for the consular order to march. They heard, but could not see the thunder of approaching sarissas, like wind through dry reeds. Veteran centurions reminded recruits that Macedonian pikes were fearsome at first contact, yet unwieldy on uneven slopes. Pilum heads were double-checked for firm lashing. Flamininus signaled the right legion, commanded by his brother Lucius, to hold position and prepare for flank support. He personally accompanied Domitius up the incline so he could command from the ridge where the collision loomed. As the fog thinned toward mid-morning, silhouettes resolved into dense Macedonian blocks surging uphill. Sarissas, leveled to a deadly horizontal plane, formed a glistening barrier as the phalanx right wing spearheaded the attack. Roman light troops scampered aside, replaced by maniples of hastati advancing in checkerboard. The 2 formations slammed together with a sound like tree trunks splitting. For a moment, it seemed the sarissa wall would roll the Romans backward, but the slope favored neither side evenly. Loose stones threatened phalangite footing, while the gaps between Roman maniples allowed individuals to sidestep thrusts and dart into blind spots beneath elevated pikes. Centurion Marcus Valerius Maximus distinguished himself here. Seeing a phalanx front rank momentarily disordered by footing, he barked at his men to hurl pila at knee height. The iron projectiles skewered exposed calves, toppling soldiers and collapsing 3 rows behind them. Valerius then led a charge through the created pocket, stabbing upward at ribs and throats before the Macedonian line could close. His initiative created a ragged indentation that disrupted sarissa continuity. Neighboring Macedonians had to swivel pikes inward, creating lateral gaps that other legionaries exploited. Yet every Roman advance met counter-thrusts. Phalangites behind dropped pike butts to fence Valerius back, and the uphill grind reset. Flamininus understood the battlefield had bifurcated. On the ridge, his left legion grappled the Macedonian right. Elsewhere, the rest of both armies remained largely static, each awaiting clarity. He realized success there could unravel Philip's entire frontage, but risked overcommitting. He dispatched messenger riders to Lucius Quinctius, instructing him to inch forward on the plain, probing but not fully engaging until signaled. Meanwhile, he called up 1,000 Aetolian light infantry under General Alexander Isius to skirt the ridge's south face, looking for a path to envelop the Macedonian wing. Philip's vantage was a low knoll east of the ridge. Through drifting patches of fog, he saw his right wing entangled and signaled the left under General Leontius to accelerate and extend line length, hoping to outflank Romans northward. Macedonian cavalry commanded by Philip's son, the Prince Perseus, waited behind Leontius, ready to sweep into any breach. Trumpets blared, banners dipped, sarissas came down in practiced synchronization. The left wing advanced across undulating ground that gradually flattened toward the northern plain. Here, the phalanx's advantages could bloom. On the Roman side, Lucius Quinctius watched enemy pikes emerge like a tide of spear points. He judged that waiting risked encirclement of his brother on the ridge. Yet a frontal assault on level ground against a fresh phalanx might be suicidal. He opted for the manipular doctrine of flexible engagement. Send out velites, emeit, and allied peltasts to pepper the advancing Macedonians, then feign withdrawal to draw them into broken terrain south of a shallow ravine. The plan relied on terrain memory. Scouts had reported piles of limestone debris there from an abandoned quarry. If the phalanx followed, its formation would distort. If it halted, Roman skirmishers could harry at leisure. Leontius, fixated on joining right-wing success he assumed imminent, instructed his men to press forward through the ravine and despite shouted warnings from subordinate syntagmata. Commanders who glimpsed uneven footing ahead. As sarissa points dipped into the ravine, their rear ends rose, complicating balance. Shields angled awkwardly, cohesion slackened. Roman velites sensed the hesitation and tightened their harassment, targeting unshielded thighs and faces. Macedonian patience snapped. Some taxis accelerated to clear the kill zone quicker. Others slowed to redress spacing, fracturing the symmetrical wall into staggering saw teeth. Seizing the moment, Lucius waved crimson baton for a full attack. Hastati surged, releasing pila that whirled overhead like swarms of angry hornets, thudding into lifted shields or snapping pike shafts. An entire front rank of phalangites dropped weapons to clutch penetrated limbs. Then principes crashed, gladii stabbing into gaps too tight for sarissa counterswings. The clash devolved into brutal pockets, where Roman shields slammed into faces and soldiers grappled among shattered pikes like wrestlers in an arena strewn with splinters. The left wing wavered, but did not break. Leontius screamed for Perseus to charge. Perseus's companion cavalry thundered along a spur, intent on rolling into Roman flanks. But a Achaean allied horse, led by Ariston of Sicyon, intercepted. Although numerically inferior, these Greek allies had lighter horses and employed javelin tactics borrowed from Iberian mercenaries Rome had fought a generation earlier. They galloped close, hurled barbed darts, peeled away before lances could skewer them, then wheeled back in swirling harassment. Macedonian heavy lancers, trained for shock not pursuit, grew frustrated. Perseus ordered a direct charge to swat aside the gnats, yet timing misaligned. Half his cavalry spurred into soft ground, churned by previous infantry passage, slowing momentum. The Achaeans exploited by darting behind, slashing at hamstrings and stabbing riders unshielded on the right. Perseus's charge stalled, leaving the phalanx's left flank dangerously exposed. Leontius's units continued fighting but nervously angled shields left, further distorting their frontage. Lucius capitalized with an old Samnite tactic, triarii kneeling front rows while Principes vaulted shields overhead, raining short javelins onto compressed enemy ranks. Macedonian stamina sagged. Men in rear rows struggled to lower pikes past bodies falling ahead. Panic flickered from file to file. When a centurion of the second cohort drove a signum eagle into the enemy line like a stake and shouted that Jupiter himself anchored Rome to that spot, nearby legionaries roared and heaved forward. The phalanx left wing began to crumple. Messages sprinted to Philip. The left collapsing, the right on the ridge still deadlocked. Cavalry repulsed. The king realized momentum had inverted. He dispatched elite hypaspists, 1,000 veteran swordsmen, to shore up Leontius and considered recalling the right wing, but communication lag threatened. War's fortunes now spun on incidental initiative. Back atop the dogs' heads, Flamininus felt his left legion losing ground. His men, exhausted from hours of uphill slugging, yielded step by step to renewed Macedonian pushes. Dust mixed with drizzle into clinging paste on faces. Every breath tasted of copper. Hearing shouts that enemy reinforcements neared, Flamininus weighed withdrawal versus final commitment. At that critical instant, a Roman military tribune, historical debate names him Publius Porcius, led 20 maniples detached earlier for guard duty up an unseen goat path on the phalanx right rear. Emerging behind Macedonian lines, they slammed Pila into unarmored backs. The surprise triggered chaos. Sarissas swung too slowly to rear. Some Macedonians dropped pikes and wielded swords, but formation integrity evaporated. Flamininus seized the shock. He ordered paired maniples to part sideways like theater curtains, letting velites hurl heavy lead plumbata darts into the crumpled phalanx. Simultaneously, Aetolian light infantry charged from the south slope into the enemy's now naked flank. Macedonian officers tried to regroup into defensive squares, but terrain and panic thwarted. Sections of the right wing began to break, fleeing downhill toward Philip's headquarters, shouting rumors of encirclement. The crisis on the right ricocheted to the left wing, still reeling under Roman assault. Leontius glimpsed standards retreating, heard distant, panicked trumpets, and misinterpreted the situation as total rout. He ordered a fighting withdrawal to preserve remaining strength, but executed amid combat. The instructions spread as retreat. Rear ranks, believing all was lost, turned and ran. Front ranks, caught between Roman swords and their own comrades' surging panic, either surrendered or fell dispossessed. In minutes, the left wing disintegrated into a tide of fleeing men. Perseus attempted to cover the retreat with cavalry, but his exhausted horses balked at trampling Phalangite runaways. Roman horse, now joined by Thessalian allies who had kept their mount strength fresh, charged into the chaotic mass, spearing fugitives or capturing them in clusters. Prince Perseus escaped north, already nursing seeds of suspicion that his father would blame him. Philip V witnessed disaster with clenched jaw. Advisors begged him to commit guards in a last stand. Others urged flight. Realizing the phalanx center could still disengage intact if covered, he signaled trumpeters to blast recall. Yet sonic confusion of battle muffled orders. Segments lay entangled with Roman cohorts now drunk on victory cries. Legionaries sang obscene parodies of Macedonian boasts while methodically stabbing crippled pikemen. By late afternoon, mist had burned off to reveal carnage strewn across gypsum-white slopes. Roman pursuit ran until legs cramped, capturing standards and wagons abandoned in haste. Sources differ on losses. Polybius cites 8,000 Macedonians killed, 5,000 captured, Roman casualties perhaps 2,000. Flamininus forbade wholesale slaughter of surrendering troops, aiming to cultivate an image of liberator still useful for post-war diplomacy. Philip retreated to Tempe Pass with roughly half his army. There, amid tearful officers, he accepted reality. Macedon could no longer face Rome in open battle. He sent envoys to Flamininus offering peace. The terms, later ratified at Tempe and enforced by the Isthmian Proclamation of 196 BC, compelled Philip to withdraw garrisons from all Greek cities, surrender most warships, pay heavy indemnities, and limit his army. Rome proclaimed freedom for the Greeks, a phrase that rang exhilarating to crowds at the Isthmian Games, but soon carried the metallic aftertaste of Roman hegemony. Cynoscephalae entered military lore for several reasons. First, it showcased in vivid relief the contrast between rigid linear formations and flexible modular systems. The phalanx's crushing power remained lethal in head-on clashes, yet its dependence on unbroken cohesion and favorable terrain rendered it vulnerable to unexpected angles of attack, changing ground and weather. The legion's checkerboard gaps and tiered lines furnished internal shock absorbers against disruption, while autonomy at lower command echelons enabled improvisation, such as Porcius's flank assault that broke the ridge stalemate. Second, the battle underscored the primacy of combined arms. Macedonian cavalry and light troops underperformed, ceding the initiative to Roman skirmishers, whose harassment fractured sarissa density before decisive charges. The Roman ability to synchronize infantry, cavalry, and missile units in evolving patterns contrasted with Philip's reliance on the phalanx as singular hammer. Third, Cynoscephalae emphasized psychological cascades. Rumors magnified setbacks. Partial collapses metastasized into rout when communication faltered. Roman morale, bolstered by trust in flexible doctrine and recent recovery from the Punic ordeal, stayed resilient amid temporary reverses. Finally, the legacy of command style emerged. Flamininus's willingness to delegate and adjust outpaced Philip's centralized reflexes. Though young, the Roman general had imbibed lessons from Italy's Mosaic Wars. Victory favors not the strongest arm, but the keenest eye for fleeting windows. On those dog-shaped hills he spotted, and his subordinates exploited, fractures invisible to a king surveying battle through fog of pride and tradition. When later Roman historians, Livy foremost, penned accounts, they framed Cynoscephalae as inevitability, the new world sweeping aside decayed grandeur. More sober analysis reveals how narrow the margin was. Had Philip secured the crest first, or Perseus's cavalry broken the Achaean screen, the phalanx might have crushed isolated Roman wings. Yet, what-ifs fade beside enduring fact. After Cynoscephalae, no Hellenistic army relying chiefly on the traditional sarissa wall would defeat a Roman legion in open field. Pydna in 168 BC and Magnesia in 190 BC would echo the lesson. The world had pivoted, and the pivot point was a rain-slick ridge in Thessaly. When twilight finally cloaked the dogs' heads, the ridge still crackled with the soft hiss of dying torches and the groans of wounded men. Macedonian and Roman alike, sprawled together, in testimony that ambition and valor know no national flag. Flamininus walked the slope with lantern in hand, pausing beside enemy officers to offer water or ask names, gestures equal parts genuine humanity and calculated magnanimity. He knew that tomorrow his victory would resound from Delphi's marble courts to the Senate's marbled halls, and that how he wielded that triumph could sculpt Rome's wider reputation. Yet even he could not fathom the full consequences. That Cynoscephalae, more than any Senate decree or silver talent levied, marked the moment when the Mediterranean world accepted the Roman legion as the ultimate yardstick of military excellence. Kings would study the manipular dance, empires would mimic its modular genius, and the very term phalanx would drift from symbol of invincibility to cautionary relic of rigidity. The battlefield remains today an unassuming range of hills overrun by goat herders and wind turbines. Scrape away a tuft of time, and you might uncover a rust-flecked nail, once part of a Roman caliga, or a mold-pitted bronze butt spike from a sarissa. Hold either artifact to the light, and you will see reflections of a dawn when two systems met, and only one walked off the ridge intact. Cynoscephalae whispers across 22 centuries that strategies must breathe, adapt, and evolve, or lie buried beneath the hooves of history's relentless advance. If the clash of legion and phalanx on Thessaly's ragged hillsides has stirred your imagination, enlist with us for more journeys into the hinge points of antiquity. Subscribe to the channel, rally the notification bell so every new campaign letter reaches your post, and march into the comments to decree which battle, Pydna, Magnesia, or perhaps the lesser-known Sartoris counterstroke, you wish to witness next. History is not a museum for the dead. It is a live drill ground where past innovations spark future insights. Shoulder your digital shield, draw your curiosity like a gladius, and help us keep these echoes ringing.